West International Partners is a volunteer organisation registered in Portugal. We have two main objectives. Firstly, since many of our members are keen to share with others their professional skills and experience as well as their hobbies, we aim to benefit local communities through organised volunteer projects. Secondly, we aim to bring together members of all the international communities in the OS region from which our membership is drawn. We're pleased to welcome you to our new project, Let's Cook. This is a light-hearted cookery series with a difference. Each week on Thursday evening at 7 p.m, a different home chef will share with you their love of cooking by showing you how to make typical dishes from their home country. We're going to introduce you to home chefs from several different countries living here in the OS region. They'll present dishes typical of Chinese, Dutch, French, Portuguese and Russian cuisine, for example, but we have many more national cuisines to share with you. Every Tuesday, we'll advertise to let you know which cuisine will be presented the following Thursday. If you enjoy watching the Let's Cook presentations, you might consider making a donation to support one or more of our many projects, which include helping the day centres for the elderly and helping the homeless and disadvantaged communities in the OS region. Here are our bank details, and the name on the account is West International Community Volunteers, and please put Let's Cook in the reference. If you'd be interested in making today's dishes, then here's the list of the ingredients you'd need, together with the method you should follow. So, sit back and enjoy. And now, let's cook.
Hello, my name's Bee West. Welcome to our house and welcome to this edition of Let's Cook. Today, I'm going to make two dishes for you. One, baked courgettes, which is a vegetarian dish with a little interest to it, and the other, a Middle Eastern dish, harissa chicken. The flavours are strong and very interesting, with some interesting flavour combinations too. Cooking has been a big hobby of mine. I have 4 sisters. All of us cook. My mother, bless her, couldn't even boil water effectively, but my father, unusually for a man of his generation, was actually quite an accomplished cook, and he created quite unusual dishes for the time. We were brought up in Ireland where haute cuisine wasn't really one of the things that happened. My father introduced gourmet dinners at a local rural hotel, and they were a massive success. In the days when wine was maybe a Spanish sauterne, he started importing French wines to go with the dishes that he was creating. And whilst he was a clever chef and a talented chef in his own right, his real skill was in coaching other people to develop their skills and explore their tastes and create adventures in food. I think my sisters and I are similar in that respect to our father. I love cookery books. I counted them last night. I'm glad my husband's not in the room at the moment because I counted at least 65. With cookery books, I love them. To me, it's like reading a good novel. If I have a new cookery book, if I find just one dish that I add to my repertoire, I'm a very happy person. I love exploring new flavours. I'm not afraid of trying new dishes. And very often when friends come to dinner, they get something I've never ever cooked before. The first dish is roast courgettes. This is a Nigel Slater recipe. Nigel does lovely kitchen supper dishes, and they're very often made from ingredients which you would ordinarily just have in your store cupboard, so you don't have to rush out and buy something different to create quite a tasty, interesting dish. Obviously, if it's roast courgettes, we have courgettes. We have breadcrumbs. We have Parmesan cheese, chopped black olives, and fresh rosemary. You can substitute dried rosemary if you wish to. If it says a tablespoon of fresh chopped rosemary, substitute maybe a teaspoon of dried rosemary, because the flavour is quite intense and quite concentrated. And obviously, our good old friend, olive oil. Okay, so for this dish we're going to use 2 courgettes. They're a reasonably large size. This will serve 2 people as a starter, or maybe 4 people as a side dish to accompany maybe a roast or grilled meat or grilled fish, maybe if it's a strong fish, but the flavour combinations in this dish are actually quite strong. So it's meat rather than fish. Okay, so in terms of quantities, we have 4 tablespoons of breadcrumbs. Now with breadcrumbs, I keep some old bread, grind it down in the food processor, and then stick it in the freezer. You've always got fresh breadcrumbs that way. Parmesan cheese, 6 tablespoons of grated parmesan. Now in this case I have parmesan flakes. I buy them in a bag from Lidl. It's just easy and it doesn't make any difference if it's flaked parmesan or grated parmesan. They melt down in exactly the same way. Black olives, 4 tablespoons of these. I buy them in a jar. They're already pitted, so without the stone, and you just roughly chop them. They don't need to be chopped too fine because you want a bit of texture on the top of your courgette. And then the rosemary, there's 2 tablespoons of fresh chopped rosemary here. If you want to use dried rosemary, that's perfectly fine. I would recommend maybe 1 or 2 teaspoons. Depends on your taste. Not everybody likes the very strong flavour of rosemary, but it's got a lovely aroma as well when it's cooking. So first we top and tail our courgettes. And then cut them in half lengthways. Then, on each half, you want to make a crisscross pattern, so cut quite deep. The reason we're doing this is we're going to brush them with oil, and you want the oil to be able to penetrate the flesh of the courgette. So crosses all down the length of each half of the courgettes. Be careful not to cut too deep because otherwise you'll go through the skin on the other side and you don't want that. Obviously sharp knives are essential. It's useful to have a chap who can sharpen them for you in this instance. The fresher the courgette, obviously, the better the result. So these were bought yesterday, so they've got quite a nice firm texture. If you use older courgettes, if they've been in the fridge for maybe a week, that's still fine. You might just wind up with a slightly soggier texture when they're roasted. Right, we're now going to put the courgettes into the dish in which they're going to be baked. Make sure your dish is big enough for them. These are actually quite big guys. There we are, and we can now get rid of the chopping board. Okay, we now want to sprinkle these with olive oil, quite a generous glug of olive oil, and brush it into the cuts. And everybody has their favourite olive oil. I don't keep a huge range of oils in my kitchen. I've always got sunflower oil, I've got olive oil obviously. I quite like this one. I always use extra virgin. This is a Gallo Reserva. Right, whilst that oil is soaking into the courgettes, we're now going to mix the ingredients for the topping. So first, in go the breadcrumbs, followed by the Parmesan cheese. Now, with the Parmesan, because it's in flakes, I'm just going to chop it about a bit with a knife, just to break it down a little. But as I say, it's not essential, it just gives a slightly finer consistency. And I'm doing it before I put the olives in, because the olives are now cut to a size which is good for the texture of the finished dish. Okay, now in with the olives. Mix that about. And then finally, the rosemary. Mix it all together. So the topping is now ready to go on the courgettes. What I'm going to do now is just give the courgettes another little drink of olive oil. And now, what we're going to do is we're going to get mucky. We're going to do this with our hands because it's easier. My hands are clean. I always wash my hands before starting cooking. And if I'm handling meat as opposed to vegetables, they get washed. Follow reasonable hygiene conditions in the kitchen. Bearing in mind this is a domestic kitchen, it's not a commercial kitchen. So you just want to spread this topping on your courgettes. Doesn't matter if it spills over the edge because that then gives you nice crunchy bits to scrape off the dish when they're cooked. And then just press it down onto the courgettes. Lovely. And then we just want to drizzle a little olive oil over the top before we go into the oven. Oven temperature is 180 and we'll bake these for about 30-35 minutes. They'll come out looking quite nice and golden brown and be very, very tasty. They're also quite pleasant eaten warm or even cold. So if you wanted some interesting picnic food, baked courgettes are good for that. So now we're ready to go. So into the oven, 180 degrees for about 30-35 minutes. The next course is harissa-marinated chicken. This is a Middle Eastern dish based on a recipe by Yotem Ottolenghi, whose cooking I really love. The great thing is as well, here in our local area, you can get all of the herbs and spices that you require to be able to work with his dishes, and the flavours are really interesting. I use a shop in Caldash called Merceria Zen. The lady who runs it is called Elsa. She has all the herbs and spices you could possibly want, more than you could shake a stick at. If you were to look at my spice rack, I've got over 50 herbs and spices in it. And I buy pretty much everything from her. Much better value than the supermarket little packets as well. They're sold by weight, so you buy just what you want. So for instance, if you want something unusual that you've never worked with before, you only want to buy a little bit, see if it works for you. Great place to go. There's another place in Lurinyar Market as well that does a similar sort of job where they sell their herbs and spices by weight. Right, harissa paste. To make your own, you need a red pepper. This needs to be singed or burnt. The skin needs to be singed or burnt so that you can then peel it easily. Now, I use a cook's blowtorch, but you can do it over any naked flame, or you can put it under the grill in the oven. If you're doing it under the grill in the oven, it might take 18 to 20 minutes to blacken the whole of the skin. What you're looking for is to have the skin of the pepper completely black. You then, when you blacken the whole of the skin, put it in a bowl, cover it with cling film. The skin will then steam itself and then be very, very easy to remove. The skin almost falls off the pepper because what you're looking for is just the soft flesh of the pepper. Red onion, slightly milder than regular onions, so the flavour is slightly more subtle. A couple of nice fresh red chillies. These are not particularly strong, but they do give it a nice kick. 3 or 4 cloves of garlic. Again, depends on how strong your garlic is. I've found that here, if I buy bio garlic, the flavour's a bit more pungent than the regular sacks that you buy in the supermarket. Either way, it doesn't really matter. It's about working to what your taste is. We need a couple of tablespoons of lemon juice. I keep fresh lemons as part of our regular stuff in the house. Always have lemons available to squeeze. Herbs and spices. We have here cumin seeds, caraway seeds, coriander seeds. There's a 1/4 teaspoon of each. To prepare these, take a dry pan, put it on a medium heat on the hob, put your herbs and put the spices in there, cook them off for maybe just a couple of minutes, just until you can start detecting the fragrance of the spices. Then take them off, put them in a pestle and mortar and grind them. The process of dry frying releases the aromas and makes them slightly more pungent in the cooking. We also have here a 1/4 teaspoon of dried chilli. Again, it depends how hot you like your chilli flavourings. You can increase that or reduce it to your own palate. What I generally do with a new recipe is I cook it as it says, and then I interpret the recipe afterwards to up or down the level of heat or coolness to our taste. So, those are your dry ingredients. The red pepper, once you've burnt the skin, take the skin off, chop it roughly, remove the seeds and put it in a food processor. With your toasted spices, once you've ground them in the mortar and pestle, again, add those to the pepper in the food processor. Your red onion, garlic and chilli, chop roughly and put them in a pan with about 1.5 tablespoons of olive oil. You want to fry those gently for about 6 to 8 minutes, just so they're softened. You don't need to chop them too finely because they're going to be blitzed in the food processor. So don't worry about making them look lovely and chefy and pretty. It's not necessary. When you've done all of that, once you've fried off these parts, the chillies, the onion and the garlic, put them in the processor with the pepper, your garlic, your spices, 2.5 tablespoons of lemon juice, and then blitz it. Add some salt and pepper as well. Again, to your taste. I tend to cook with very little salt. I prefer people to add their own salt, but sometimes it is essential for the overall balance of a dish. So, grind that all up, and you wind up with a paste. So, it's this lovely red coloured paste. There is olive oil in this as well, about 1.5 tablespoons. Mix it all up, and then I have 4 chicken breasts in here. Spread the paste over the chicken. You can marinate it for as little as an hour, but I always think the flavours develop far better if it's marinated overnight, which is what I've done with this. Having marinated it overnight, I'm also a very firm believer in cooking meat only when it's at room temperature. It's not good to put chilled meat straight into the oven. So, what we're going to do with this now is lift the chicken breasts out of the paste and pop them into a dish, and these will roast in the oven for about 30 minutes until they're cooked. This is going to get a bit messy, but never mind. So, just gently take most of the paste off. It doesn't matter if some is left on. You can use chicken thighs for this as well. It really depends on your taste. I just like chicken breasts because it makes for a nice neat serving for each person. So this will serve 4. And we're going to serve this with a rocket and orange salad, and we're going to serve a sauce with it as well. In the oven now, at the same temperature as the courgettes for about 30 minutes. And I'm going to have to move the shelf. Now, to go with the harissa-marinated chicken, we're going to make a sauce. It's very simple. We have 150 millilitres of orange juice goes into our pan. 130 ml of lemon juice. And the magic ingredient, 150 ml of maple syrup. So you've got the contrast of bitterness and sweetness combining there. To go with these, we have a whole star anise and a good pinch of cinnamon. They all simply go in the pan. And we're going to give those a stir, bring them to the boil, and then simmer them for about 20 minutes. Okay, so we've combined all of those three liquid ingredients, the star anise and the cinnamon, and the pot's just coming to the boil. What we want to do is then simmer this for about 20 minutes so that the sauce reduces and thickens a little, and then it can be drizzled over the chicken when it's cooked. We're going to serve the chicken with a rocket and orange salad. So I'm just going to turn this down now and let it bubble away. Okay, so our courgettes are now ready, so we'll take those out of the oven. As you can see, they've turned a nice light golden brown colour, and we're just going to set those to one side and leave them until we're ready to serve with the chicken. Whilst we're over here, we'll just check our sauce. That's bubbling away nicely and gradually reducing down, and that should be ready when our chicken is ready. To go with the chicken, we're going to make a rocket and orange salad. The pepperiness of the rocket complements the richness and the spiciness of the harissa chicken beautifully. So, rocket, by pre-prepared, already washed, easy. I'm all for cooks taking the quickest route possible to get to where they want to be. Oranges, you need 2 oranges. And what I've done with these is I have peeled them, removed all the pith, cut them into segments with all the membrane removed as well. So there is nothing chewy there, you're just getting beautiful, fresh, sharp orange. So we're going to put 2 oranges in with the rocket. Your segments also give a nice shape to the salad as well. So it looks reasonably pretty when it's on the plate. I am not the tidiest chef by any means, so sometimes some of my food looks as though it's been through a car crash, but it tastes good still. So, again, use your hands, just mix it through. This is such a simple salad, it's so easy, but very, very tasty. So again, beautiful, rich, extra virgin olive oil, just drizzle that all over. Also, some black pepper, just a few twists, and fresh ground salt. And again, use your hands. It's one of the easiest way and the best way of mixing something like this so that you get all the flavours beautifully combined. Now our salad's ready to go when our chicken's ready to be served. Okay, so now we're ready to plate the courgettes. I like a little decoration on the plates, and I also love plain white china. I think the colour of the food comes off the plates beautifully that way. I'm using iceberg lettuce as a base for this, just because it's a pale green, and it gives you a very nice contrast with the darkness of the courgettes. So, just a little iceberg on each of these platters. Maybe a little more on that one. Whilst I don't particularly like icebergs and lettuce in its own right, because I think it lacks flavour, it's a very good foil for presentation. There we are. Then we take our courgettes. diagonally. As you can see, that cheesy topping is lovely and sticky. And just present them so. And another one. Oops. They're a little floppy as they come out of the dish, but they're still holding firm. So the oil has gently cooked the courgette base through without turning it soggy. So the chicken's been in the oven for about 30 minutes. It's beautifully cooked through. It's still lovely and succulent and moist. That's partly the function of the harissa paste, where it was being marinated overnight. It also has this lovely red gold colour, which makes it very attractive. So now we're going to plate up. First, we take our salad. It's just absorbed a little of the flavours whilst it's been standing. So the oil, the salt, the pepper and the orange all combine to give us a beautiful colourful bed on which to serve our chicken. Now we go to the chicken, and I've made enough for 4 people here, unless you're greedy and want 2 portions of course. And as you can see, the combination of the green and the orange contrasting with chicken makes it look quite an attractive dish. And there's just room on this platter for all 4 pieces. Now our sauce, which to remind you was made with maple syrup, orange juice, lemon juice, star anise and cinnamon, has reduced down by about 1/3. It's still a drizzling sauce rather than the coating sauce. We're not looking for it to coat the meat. So we're just going to drizzle over a little of this, and I'm right-handed, so, and again that will trickle down to the salad as well. And as I said earlier, the pepperiness of the rocket, the sharpness of the orange, the smoothness of the olive oil, they all combine to complement the strong chilli flavour that you'll be getting from the harissa paste. Now, I made my own harissa paste, but if you don't want to go to all that trouble, because it takes about 40 minutes to make it, you can buy a little jar of it and just mix it with Greek yoghurt. Harissa paste is available in local supermarkets. There is nothing that I've used here today that you cannot buy locally. Sometimes you have to walk around a bit to find it, but everything that I've used today is available locally. Again, mix it to your taste, but roughly a teaspoon of ready-made harissa to about 2 tablespoons of Greek yoghurt does the job and creates a similar effect, although I prefer the homemade look. So, I'm Bea. It's been my pleasure to cook for you today, and thank you for joining us on Let's Cook.